You could have given up, but you didn't. You could have stopped believing, but you didn't. You could have kept living their expectations, but you decided to make this life your own. And in turn, you're here. Hello everyone, today we're meeting Marc Paisant. He is a personal trainer, a host of a Relatively Normal podcast, also the host of 6amrun.com podcast. Hello Marc, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So let's start our conversation by diving into your personal journey of becoming the person you are today. What led you to discover your true passion in life? How did it start for you?
That's such a kind of a loaded question, but I think I was fortunate enough to kind of find my own way in life through challenges and let's be honest, like I didn't grow up in terrible conditions. I wasn't poor. I always had food on the table, a place to sleep, all that good stuff. But I think as a kid, I always figured that I'd figure out what was going on, or I just work through what was going on in regard to my anxiety and feelings of depression and kind of not feeling comfortable with my body and with myself. And as a young adult, I did the thing that every young adult does. I try to make my place in the world. I try to find a good job, buy a house, get married, have kids, all that good stuff. And I figured out that I was checking all those boxes. However, I still wasn't really happy with everything that was going on. So, and I've talked about this a lot, and I found a lot of answers through therapy and helped me with my coping mechanisms and kind of find my triggers. And I went through a period of making sure I had the right people around me, because for the longest time I didn't have the right people around me. And I always wanted to be a personality. I always wanted to be my voice out there, a radio host, something like that. And one day I started a podcast, and that one didn't go so well. I didn't like how it was going, so I stopped doing that one. But then I started, Relatively Normal, and I was invited to the 6 a.m. Run podcast and about fitness and nutrition. And I kind of found my journey with personal fitness too, or physical fitness too. And I found that when I combined the work I was doing with my mental health and the work I was doing with my physical health, plus being able to be a voice for so many people on my podcast, that's how I kind of figured out my true passion in life.
Wow. Yeah, it's been a long journey for you. And you realize this body-mind connection of the way that we feel on a daily basis, we have to address all the time. We have to always question ourselves, why am I feeling this way? And there's always a reason for it. But a lot of times people suppress their emotions and they try to escape that present moment by looking into addictions, or it could be other means that they use in social media or food or whatever that means for them to escape that present moment, to not face the reality that they live in. But without them doing that and without them processing those type of emotion, they just keep them stuck and suppressed. And it's not a good way to deal with that, because eventually over time, it's going to still come up to the surface, and it's going to appear in the situation we don't want to, because a lot of times we're triggered with other people when we interact, and we see how that trigger could, bring that emotion to the surface, and we don't know why it's happening. But with us establishing the practice of processing those emotions on a daily basis, or when it comes, and we feel it, we need to find a way to cope with that in a more healthier, beneficial way for us. So I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on what helped you during your dark times, and what helped you to build a certain practice or maybe daily habits that you still use until now, and you do it because you know it prevents you from going into that place?
And I apologize. I'm smiling because everything you were just saying was literally me. Like it was me. And you're absolutely right. Like for the longest time, when it came to those feelings I had, and it could be a sunny day outside, everything could be going great, but still I'd have those anxious feelings, or I have those, just really dark feelings. And I would just keep telling myself, it'll go away. Like it'll literally just wait. It'll go away. You shouldn't feel like this. Man up. There's people in the world who have less than you that are doing more. And I would just beat myself up internally all the time, thinking that was the right way to handle it, thinking like this is going to be what's going to take care of it. While looking back, I was just making it worse. I literally was making it worse. I was not treating myself as a friend. I was using very negative internal monologue. I was just beating myself up. And you're absolutely right. What I was doing was I was suppressing all those feelings. I was saying, keep them in, don't let them out, and you'll be fine. Until I got to just a point where I couldn't live like that anymore. And I'd mentioned therapy before, and this is conversations I had with multiple therapists, and I kind of started working on, coping mechanisms and finding noticing my triggers, because something happens physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually, once we put how we feel out into the world. And there's a couple things. One, we finally figure out that we're not alone in these thoughts. Like other people feel the same way, and you're not only helping yourself, you're helping others. And two, it starts the process of actually healing any traumas. Like if we keep it in, we're just perpetuating those traumas, whether it be a physical trauma, emotional trauma, generational, whatever kind of trauma it is. So I started to learn that when I opened up to, first, of course, my therapist, and then, my girlfriend, or my at the time, my wife now, or friends or family members, and the support I would get, and I still get to this day, is amazing. And I kind of kick myself because I'm like, man, I could have been doing this for years. Like I could have had this, this support system for so long, but I thought that because of, the quote unquote, stigma of being masculine or male, or, always trying to take care of yourself and take care of others, and literally emptying your tank, was how I was supposed to live. I thought that. And now I know that I don't have to live that way. And to answer, more specifically your question, there was kind of a paradigm shift in my physical fitness. And once I decided to get fit again, I used to run a lot and go to the gym a lot to forget about the world, to forget about my issues, to forget about, I'm just going to, whatever stress I have, I'm going to leave it at work or leave it at home. I'm going to go and forget about it. And now I go work out or go for a run to lean into it. I know that it's a part of me, because if I just run to go away from the problems, guess what? They're still going to be there. And that ruins my run. Like that ruins, my burn that day. So now it's like when I go to the gym or when I go for a run, I'm running towards the things that I need to work on, or working harder for the things I need to work on, rather than running or working against them.
Wow, yeah, definitely. And you found the way that helped you to cope with all of these emotions by going to therapy, and then starting going to gym and running, because a lot of times people find solutions when they start, some kind of sport or martial arts. I've noticed it has a way of you giving yourself space to process and at the same time to be mindful. And that's a very important practice. I also sometimes bring up meditation as it has a lot of benefits for a lot of people, and it brings them back to that present moment and where we can catch those negative thinking pattern that we're in. And a lot of times we don't recognize it because it's like on autopilot and it's what's running our life. And that's how we live by default without knowing what we're doing, you know? And if we don't know why we're doing what we're doing, we always have to stop and question ourselves and find the reason for it and find a way to connect to who we are, because that's the foundation. And if we don't keep ourselves grounded and present, any action that we take, you know, it's not going to bring us to where we're going, where we want to be in life, right? So with us, kind of take time for ourselves and dedicate that time on a daily basis. That's important. And I always say that making it a priority, having mental and physical health established first, give it to yourself first. That's from that place you can give more to others, to serve others. Don't you think so?
You bring up so many good points there, and I want to kind of hit on a couple. First, you're absolutely correct with the prioritizing yourself, and let's just simplify it down. Like, yeah, we want to prioritize our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health, all that kind of health that we have. But it comes down to just prioritizing yourself and what you need. And I say it all the time, like if you think about all the things that are important in your life, important to you, whether that be your family, your friends, your career, your ambitions, your hobbies, whatever those are, there's one common denominator, and it's you. So it makes no sense for you to try to individually go take care of those things and then figure out that energy will come back to you. Like, you're part of all those things. So take care of yourself, and the rest will take care of itself. But the thing you mentioned about people finding that peace and that calm in sport or in physical activity, or we can just say, you know, anything that gets their mind to a point where they're focused on one thing. Because I think a lot of people don't really understand what an anxious mind looks like or feels like. And it's literally just, you know, one, you're thinking about the worst possible outcome, but you're also thinking about the worst possible outcome for everything that's happening in your life. And you're constantly preparing for those outcomes, and it's draining, it's debilitating sometimes. But when you start to focus on something that requires energy and you do it with intention, and I think that's what you were talking about, because that intention takes that energy and that stress and it makes it positive. And we start to, all that nervous, anxious energy is directed into a positive outcome, into a direct intention. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned about myself and about how my brain works, is that if I am doing nothing, if I'm just in my own thoughts, I'll get anxious really quickly. I may get down really quickly. But I've noticed that if I get up, start moving, do something with intention, it could be yard work. It could be, hey, I want to make sure my lawn is cut. I want to make sure my garage is clean. I want to make sure and go to, like, whatever it is, I want to have that intention built in and not just do it to do it and go through the motions. Like I could go cut my lawn and be done in an hour and not even think about it, be on autopilot. Like you said, I know how to do that. I know how to turn the mower on and go do it. But if I do it because my intention is to, you know, that's my duty in the house. I want to make sure my lawn is taken care of. I want to present a nice house because I live in a nice neighborhood. Like if I do things with intention, then I feel accomplished. And I tell you what, it's a total mind shift when you do something like that.
Yeah, I think every action, you know, make, we have to have an intention behind it. And then that intention should be clear. So whenever somebody asks you, why are you doing this? You have to have a clear answer, not just because everybody done it before me, or because I'm just copying somebody, or any type of response is just, not clear understanding, or you being confused. There's something going on where you don't have that clear answer. So you have to first make those type of goals for yourself and understand, what do you want in life? Where do you want to be? Who you want to be? And like, start working on it with intention. What steps are required for you to get to that level, or to that goal, or to be that person, right? What is missing, and how can you take those steps today? Simplify it, because a lot of times we overwhelm ourselves with the big goals, and in the end we procrastinate and we don't do anything. And with you talking about nothing will change, it comes down to action, but not just any action. It has to be action with an intention behind it. Because if we're talking about that reality that we're in is of my own creation, so I did everything what I have so far. Either I like it or I don't like it, but it's a good news because I'm responsible for it and I'm the one who's going to change it, right? So with that responsibility, we know that anything could be changed in our lives only if we redirect that energy and start making meaningful steps toward the direction that we're going. So what do you think will help people to stay on track?
That is such, like, putting the why behind it. It sounds so like out there and woo woo and like, oh, it's so philosophical, but it's so just dead on and correct. And it's harder than people understand. And that is putting the why behind things basically gives your life meaning and gives your actions meaning. And there was a turning point in my life, probably, I've been working on this for as long as I can remember, as long as I've been an adult, just to get and stay in a growth mindset. And that comes in every aspect of my life. Like there was moments where I was at dead end jobs and I figured, this is my life. There was moments I was, 300 pounds and I figured, this is my life. And there's moments where, I just, I was injured or just had a surgery, or, I just thought, well, this is it. And I felt defeated, and I felt like I was just stuck in this ongoing loop, this perpetual loop. And, once I decided, and this was a switch. This was the switch. Once I decided to not let anything else, write my story. Once I decided that if I want to learn something, I'm going to learn how to do it. If I want to make a podcast, well, guess what? I'm going to, research the right mics that I want, research the right, materials, listen to podcasts and see the cadences, things like that. If I want to get in shape, I'm going to research some good pre-workouts, some post-workouts, focus on my nutrition. Because I want to stay in that mindset where I want to continually get better and continually focus on growing. And I mean growing as an adult, growing as a human, growing as a man, growing as a Black man, growing as a father, growing as a husband, growing as a brother, like growing in all those dimensions. Because once I figured out that I can answer my why, like I don't have to go outside. Like, why am I here? Why am I doing this? Why? Like, I'm the one that can answer that question. And I think people really, sometimes they don't understand how powerful they are. They don't understand how much strength they have. And I'm not telling you not to be in a victim mentality. I'm not going to be that guy that sits on a, a pedestal above you and says, don't have a victim mentality. It's like, well, you're talking to victims. Some of our victims, like that's pretty, that's pretty, just wrong and not very empathetic. But I will be the person that stands up on that pedestal and says, you're stronger than you think you are. Because I figured out my strength. Like I didn't realize it at the time, but like I have the ability to answer that question, why, and do things with intention.
Right. And we don't understand how strong we are until we have no choice but to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we become stronger going through some kind of challenges, issues, adversity in our life. And if we make it to the other side of it, then we see what we can do, because a lot of times we talk ourselves out of doing certain things, making up excuses why we can do certain things. But only if we try, only if we give ourselves time, and also the more we try and see the evidence for what we can, it builds the confidence, right? And it'll show us more opportunities that open up, because again, with you being committed to the process of growing and knowing that this is my life, I'm responsible, and this is what I'm going to do. Nothing will keep me off track. I'm focused and I'm giving myself the best with all the tools available nowadays. We have everything we need, and we have to be grateful for what we have, focusing on what we have instead of what we don't have, right? And the more will come. And a lot of times again, I'm not talking about victim mindset, but people just, don't appreciate what they have in life, I guess, and they don't see how much is available. And only if we shift that perspective, and then the more ways will kind of open up for us. But we have to change that mindset. We have to make that shift. And I think the gratitude practice comes very handy. What do you think about just focusing on what we're grateful for on a daily basis? Do you think that's something that could help people?
And we have to be very careful, because for a simple answer is yes, that can help people. However, we have to be very careful in how we frame that when we're talking to the people that we truly care about. And because I've done this in the past. We've all done it, where a friend will be down, or I had a boss that used to do this, and we'll be upset about something, and the reaction will be like, well, there's kids starving in Africa, and you should be grateful for what you have. And it's like, well, that has nothing to do with me. Like, why? I don't understand what that has. Like, I'm like, what are we talking about here? So we have to be. And I actually did, one of my shows was on the pros and cons of gratitude, where you're absolutely right there. Your daily affirmations, you get up and you're thankful for waking up on the right side of the dirt, and you're thankful for your life that you have, and the body that you have. And that goes a lot with body confidence and body image issues, things like that. But at the same time, if we're talking to a loved one or a friend, which is how we should be talking to ourselves, or how we can talk to ourselves, is we don't want to invalidate feelings. Like, I don't want someone to come in to an office that I work in and be upset because they're having an issue at home with one of their kids, or one of their kids got suspended for talking back to a teacher, or got a detention for whatever. Or we don't want our first response to be, well, it could be a lot worse. Like that's inconsiderate. It doesn't show any empathy. Now, further down the road, once we've listened to our friend talk, and this includes ourselves, and we understand why they feel the way they feel, and we show compassion, and we show sympathy, and we are there to help them, And once they start getting out of it and working out of their stages of grief or however they deal with it, we might just want to remind it that, man, thank God it wasn't a lot worse. Like because that's saying it in a way that, okay, we can work with this. We can do something with this. There's always a worse. Like, people don't realize there's always a worse thing. There's always someone who has it worse than you. There's always someone who has it better than you. Like, that's never the response, is that, oh, well, you don't have as good as them. Like, we do the opposite. So where gratitude can work is if it's said in a positive light, if it's said not as an invalidation of someone's feelings. If someone is upset because their husband or wife just got deployed to war, or deployed to, say a non-war country, like, we don't want to just snap at the finger and say, well, at least they didn't go to that other country. It's like, well, they're still gone. This person still hurts. So we just want to make sure that we're using compassion and empathy when we speak to those people we care about.
Definitely. We have to show that compassion because, again, we not only have to think about how we talk to ourselves on a daily basis, which is, like you mentioned, we have to talk like we're talking to a friend, because a lot of times we're putting ourselves down and talking worse to ourselves than to the other people. But also, we have to be mindful when we interact with others. How is that happening? Are we validating their feelings and emotions they're going through? Are we really having that compassion and knowing what they're going through and understanding? Because all they need is to feel heard. They just want that space to talk, this feeling safe, that you will listen and you will understand what they're talking about. And that's all they need from you. Like, every one of us, we have answers within us, and they will know it for themselves. All they need is for you to listen. And listening is actually an active skill, it's not passive. And a lot of people underestimate what could be, how it could serve people with you just listening to them. If you just give that time to that person, it could mean a lot, during that few minutes that person just told you his or her story, and then they know what's next. And maybe some answer just came to them just because they opened up. Because we need to, we need to talk to somebody, either to a friend, to a therapist, to a person that will create no judgmental space for us to open up. And that should be done regularly. We don't have to suppress our feelings again, and just finding who we can talk to and making that like a practice, because it helps us to navigate through life. It helps us to find the solutions that we're seeking. And again, like, we could create different scenarios in our head in terms of what could go wrong. But once we start listening to what we're saying, what is the issues at hand, sometimes we see that it's maybe not such a big deal that we made out of it. Sometimes I even say, like, journaling could help. If you like write it down and you look at it, something magical happens. You see that statement on a piece of paper and it loses power over you in a way, right? Sometimes, depending on what that is, but with you just looking at it from different perspective, either saying out loud or writing it down, you can find yourself in a place where you feel lighter, you feel better. Why do you think that is?
There's science behind that, and I wish I had it in front of me. I'm actually in research on it. There's science behind, whether we say something in an affirmation over and over again, or whether we write it down, or whether we tell it to another person. There's a physiological effect that happens to us, and it's as easy as like when someone gets overly stressed or just has a bad moment and they just pause for a moment and take 10 deep breaths in. Like it's a physiological effect that it has. And as one of my friends told me, she believes that just putting things out into the world helps you and brings the energy back in to help you deal with that. But, you know, it's, again, the reason people don't do these things is because they don't think it'll help. They're not prepared for the help. And I think people really need to understand that. Like some people are just not, it goes with getting into a good weight regimen, like in being transformative with your body. Like some people aren't prepared to start the journey. They're scared to start it. And you're absolutely right about, you know, when we talk to these people, when we converse with the people that mean the most to us, being that active listener and being that empathetic listener and trying to see things from their perspective. Because it's very easy for someone to come to us and say, I don't think I can do this and I'm not ready to do this. And us to say, oh, well, you can. You're selling. Yeah, you can do it. You know, we're literally talking over them. We're, you know, look at a group of friends the next time you're around. Look at a meeting. How many people talk literally right after another person is done talking, rather than take the time to understand what they're saying or see their point of view? Like if someone has told you they can't or won't or don't know how to, the next words out of your mouth should be, after you've taken the time to take it in, is tell me more, talk to me. Why? Like, how can I help? Not dismissing how they're feeling. And don't get me wrong, this takes practice. It's commonplace for people just to talk over each other, especially in groups. You know, it's been known in American culture for the longest time, probably in other cultures too, but I can't speak for them. But it's a sociological event where people in groups watch them. They talk over our sitcoms, our dramas. Everything is, you know, a great example. I'm probably aging myself, but Gilmore Girls was basically a show based on Rory and her mother going back and forth in dialogue. And I don't know how either of them, you know, actually listened to what the other was saying. But it's one of those things. It is learned. Don't get me wrong. It is learned. It takes training. It takes skill. And honestly, sometimes it takes a friend calling another friend out. And I do this with my girls. My girls are young and they talk literally right after me or their mother talks to them. And I immediately stop them and I say, what did we just say? Explain to me what you just heard from us. And you should see the looks in their faces sometimes. But I'm not being mean about it. I want them to learn to be good listeners so they can be good friends and good sisters and good mothers and good role models and good mentors and good coaches. Like I want the biggest form of respect you can show someone is to give them your full undivided attention and actually comprehend what they're telling you.
Definitely. And sometimes maybe we need to reflect on what just being said. Sometimes you would say, is that what you meant just now? Am I understanding that correctly? Because, you know, even if we listen, sometimes we could understand through our lenses, right? And we could get somebody wrong, you know, the way we see things. But with our just asking, like sometimes people don't, you know, realize that with us asking simple questions and making that clear for everybody, that could, you know, resolve a lot of issues or misunderstandings or confusion that could go into your way of interacting with people. Because if you don't resolve it, it could pile up later on, or it could, I don't know, just show up in a different way that, again, you could easily solve it, but just asking a simple question. Did I understand you correctly, right? Is that what you meant, really? So that's all you need to do, to be a listener and to be compassionate and to know that people have their own journey. They struggle with something different that you struggle with. And again, maybe, you know, sometimes people say, you wouldn't understand me because you were never in that situation. You were never been in my shoes.
Mhm.
Maybe they're right. I never been in exactly the same situation, but I could still imagine myself going through that type of event, and have the idea what it might feel like, right? It's still better than dismissing somebody else's feelings. So you still connect on some kind of level from that point. So with you making that effort and giving time to that person, that means a lot.
Mhm.
And that builds a really meaningful relationship with people. And I feel like that's what's important in our life, to have meaningful relationship. And it comes down to every aspect of your life, personal, business, everything is built on networking and people who you know, but not just know what kind of relationship you have with those people, trust, all that foundation. It comes from your intention behind your action when you interact with people. So coming back to knowing why you're doing it, right? And building yourself first and giving yourself the best that you can give in terms of mental and physical health, and knowing how you want to proceed with your life, what steps are you taking. And also I always stress out how important it is for us to establish some kind of routine, I would say, or daily habits that help us, really give us that support. And a lot of times people are scared of the word discipline. We have to discipline ourselves in a way that is good for us, that's beneficial. Uh, I just want you to elaborate more on how do you see discipline and if you see any benefits in it.
Discipline, between discipline and intention, those are probably my two favorite words right now. And because people are always looking for motivation. They're always looking for inspiration. Oh, I would go for a run this morning, but I'm not feeling it. Like I would interview for that job, or I would look for another. I'm not motivated. I'm not inspired. And it's like, if you're going to continually look for inspiration or motivation, you might as well just wrap it up now. Like I hate to be that kind of black and white with it, but you can ask anyone who has been successful in life. I'm not talking about CEOs or NBA professional basketball players. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just anyone who has made their mark on this world and been successful and been happy. There has been plenty of days they did not want to do what they do. Listen, there's been plenty of times where I haven't want to put out a podcast episode, but I know that is something I'm responsible for. I woke up at 4:00 this morning. Do you think I want to do that every morning? But no, that's the time I have for myself to get to the gym so I can get to the office early, so I can get, my work done, so I can get home to take my daughter to basketball practice. Like that's the time I have. Either I don't do it or I make time for it. And once people realize like how important discipline is, we're creatures of habit and we're social creatures. You're absolutely right. Like it's we see it as some type of mental issue when someone is a recluse. Like we see normal in our society as someone who can interact with others. We see when someone can't stay to a routine, we see that as an issue. The most successful people, again, they wake up, they have their morning coffee or water or tea, they get exercise in, they take a shower, they take time with their family, they go into the office or start working, they take specific breaks, they set boundaries, they stop at a specific time, they do things with their family, like they have, and it might sound boring to some people, but discipline and having that actual daily routine is a very hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to stick to. And I'll tell you right now, my brain loves routine. My brain loves to be rigid. And I know when I'm not planned out my day or not what I'm going to do or do something that's that doesn't vibe with me, I have to like take a moment and step back and be like, okay, I could do this. Like it, but other than that, like once people start to realize like what discipline means and how it can positively affect, and we're not talking about discipline as in the negative connotation, like discipline is a positive thing. Like keeping your promises, setting boundaries, making time with your family every day, like doing something that makes you happy every day. I mean, tell me something that's bad about that. But it takes discipline.
I know. And for me as well, I understand the benefits behind it. But again, it takes practice, and it, like you said, over time, it just becomes your second nature. So maybe in the beginning, it could be something scary about it, right? But once you start integrating that in your life, and you will see the results for yourself, how good it is to have structure, your calendar booked for specific time slots to do something that you're planning to do, and it's gonna bring you some kind of result, either personal, professional, and you plan it ahead of time. You already know what's going to happen. And again, coming back to having responsibility for creating your own experiences and life in general, that's what supports you in that decision, and that gives you that structure. And again, maybe you need to get used to it, right, in the beginning, but then like it's just so it become effortless. It's just become part of your routine of who you are. You don't need to really like think about it twice, and the work already done for you. You just look at it and you know what to do, and that's it. You just go and do it. But I feel like there's a lot of benefits that comes with you being disciplined, and you have to give yourself time to see for yourself how it's working out for you. For some people, they like it one way, some people the other way. So you can do whatever works for you and adjust it the way you choose to. But it's just gives you that opportunity to kind of prepare yourself, right? Like you said, some days you can feel good. It's easy when you feel good, right, to do something. But there are days that you don't feel like doing anything, right? And that's when it comes into place. That's when you see the most benefit of it, right? But without you preparing in advance, when the time hits, like you don't know what to do, and you can feel that confusion. So it's just extra help for you to go through difficult times. And I would advise people to look into that and see for themselves. But that definitely helps me, and I know a lot of people, including you as well. And like I said, successful people, that's what they do. And again, it's not a coincidence that all people who are successful doing that, right? Like you have to always ask yourself a question. If those people achieved something in life, we're not talking about those who didn't achieve anything, but those who achieved something and they do certain practices, why don't I try it and see for myself, right? So, and that was a great conversation we had today. I'm so glad we had time to meet. And for those who would like to connect with you, Marc, how can they find you?
Well, thank you. This has been incredible, and people can either find me on IG, and I actually have 3 IGs. One's my personal one, but then there's Relatively Normal, which you can search for on Instagram, and then Paisant_fitness, where you can follow my fitness journey and get some fitness tips. And then people can just search for Relatively Normal. It's available anywhere you listen to podcasts, and I do a lot of work on LinkedIn also, and my last name is Paisant.
Yes, and I'm gonna also include it in show notes to make it easier. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and wisdom today. And in closing, what would be the thought for today that you want to share with people?
I think you kind of said it. I usually have something specific that I say, but you mentioned just trying. And that is, you think it's difficult, or when I say you, I'm talking in general, like people think it's difficult to try. Like I think it's more difficult not to. And vulnerable, I understand the vulnerable part of trying. You're putting yourself out there. I'm going to go to the gym and I a few extra pounds, or I'm going to go for a run and I haven't run, or I'm going to go to a therapist and, there's a stigma associated with it. Like trying is an amazing feeling because it breaks that mental barrier. It, maybe I should try, and, oh, I'm stronger than I think I am. So I think I'm going to leave it at that. I think you put it well. And I hope somebody hearing this decides that today is the day that they're going to try.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, hit the subscribe button and share it with others. Stay tuned.